Okay, today we are looking at one of the absolute most mind-boggling biological extremes our planet has ever produced. When we talk about ancient marine life, it's pretty easy to just picture your standard run-of-the-mill sea monsters. But the creature we're breaking down in this explainer pushed the absolute boundaries of vertebrate anatomy. We're talking about a physical structure so wildly disproportionate, it almost defies logic. Let's get right into it. 76. I want you to just hold that number in your head for a second. You and I, we have exactly 7 cervical or neck vertebrae. A modern giraffe, even with that massive towering neck, it also only has 7. But our subject today possessed a staggering 76 individual neck bones. That is literally the absolute highest number of neck vertebrae known in any vertebrate animal in the entire history of Earth. It's a world record that has stood for over 70 million years. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, Anatomy of a Giant. The giant we're talking about here is Albertonectes van der Velde. It was an elasmosaurid plesiosaur, so a highly specialized, fully aquatic marine reptile. It basically dominated the late Cretaceous period in this massive, shallow body of water called the Bear Paw Sea, which was part of the Western Interior Seaway that once split North America right down the middle. And make no mistake, this was not some lightweight creature. It was a heavy, barrel-shaped animal weighing anywhere from 2 to 4 metric tons. Now, the proportions on this animal are just absolutely wild. On one end, you have this immense 7-meter-long neck. Guys, that's 23 feet of just neck. It made up nearly 2/3 of the creature's entire body. But then, on the exact opposite end, Albertonectes had this surprisingly short, stiff tail. Actually, its posterior-most tail vertebrae were completely fused together into a structure that's super similar to a bird's pegastyle. So it acted mostly as a small rudder-like stabilizer rather than a massive tool for pushing itself through the water. So when you put it all together, that massive neck, a dense barrel-like torso, and the short tail, you get an animal stretching roughly 11.6 meters or about 38 feet long. And keep in mind, that measurement includes a comparatively tiny skull just perched right at the very end of that incredibly long neck. Reaching almost 12 meters in total length firmly solidifies Albertonectes as one of the longest elasmosaurs scientists have ever discovered. Now, you might be wondering, how does a creature with 23 feet of incredibly heavy neck not just tip completely forward and sink face first into the mud? Well, the answer lies in gastroliths. By deliberately swallowing dense stomach stones, these marine reptiles aided their digestion, but more crucially, they managed their buoyancy. Albertonectes absolutely needed a way to maintain a horizontal position in the water without burning through massive amounts of muscular energy just trying to stay level. And paleontologists actually found the proof right there in its fossilized belly. Exactly 97 shirt stones were recovered right alongside the Albertonectes skeleton. And get this, some of these stones were up to 13.5 centimeters in diameter. That's larger than a softball. By swallowing these heavy rocks, the animal basically created a dense ballast right in its midsection. This perfectly counteracted the immense weight of that front-heavy neck and the natural buoyancy of its large lungs, letting this massive creature achieve neutral buoyancy and just glide effortlessly through the water column. Moving right along to Section 2, Stealth Hunter of the Sea. So, with its buoyancy perfectly trimmed, this bizarre, seemingly awkward body plan actually functioned as a highly lethal adaptation in the murky waters of the Western Interior Seaway. Now, what's really interesting about this is how simple biomechanics grounds our understanding of paleontology. Over the years, people have proposed some pretty wild sci-fi ideas about why elasmosaurs had such incredibly long necks. You hear theories like them generating electric shocks to stun prey or lifting their heads way out of the water like giant swans. But modern biomechanics proves that their neck joints couldn't even support a swan-like pose against gravity. As this quote hits the nail on the head, the mundane explanation really is the true one. This incredibly long neck was simply a highly practical, submerged adaptation for foraging and sneaking up on prey. Just think about its hunting strategy from the perspective of a small school of fish. Step 1, Albertonectes cruises deep below the school, keeping its massive 4-ton body totally hidden in the murky depths. Step 2, it uses lateral, sweeping movements of its highly flexible neck to slowly bring that tiny head up into the school. Because the giant paddling body is over 20 feet away, the fish don't sense the water displacement. They don't even see a massive predator approaching. Then, step 3, it darts its tiny head in, using sharp, interlocking, needle-like teeth to snatch up slippery prey before the school even realizes it's under attack. It's brilliant. Section 3, Survival and Reproduction. let's shift gears from hunting tactics to how this creature actually navigated daily life in the Cretaceous. Because, let's face it, these oceans were incredibly dangerous, filled with massive apex predators. So how did Albertonectes survive? And maybe more importantly, how did it reproduce?
So, the crucial point is that Albertonectes was far too heavy to just drag its bulk onto a beach like a modern sea turtle. Its limbs had evolved into stiff hydrofoils for underwater flight, making them entirely useless for crawling on land. Therefore, they relied on viviparity, giving birth to live young directly out in the open ocean. And fossil evidence from related plesiosaurs actually indicates they gave birth to a single, very large baby. That massive biological investment strongly suggests that a really high level of maternal care was required to protect a vulnerable newborn in such hostile, predator-filled waters.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why those babies needed so much protection. The Western Interior Seaway was a terrifying food web to be a part of. Albertonectes shared its home with giant predatory mosasaurs and massive plesiosaurs, some of which were entirely capable of hunting full-grown elasmosaurs. We know for a fact that even an adult Albertonectes wasn't immune to the ocean scavengers. Actually, the exact fossil we are discussing today bears the physical scars of this environment. Scientists found 2 shed teeth and distinct bite marks from squalacroc sharks right on the fossilized coracoid bone of its chest, so it was definitely scavenged upon after death. Section 4. Unearthed in a gem mine. Let's pivot from the ancient world over to the modern era for a second, because the story of how we found an almost completely articulated fossil of an animal this large is incredibly serendipitous. Let's move to the timeline and see how this all builds. Roughly 74 million years ago, during the Campanian stage, this giant lived and died in the Bearpaw Sea, eventually sinking into soft, muddy sediment that perfectly preserved its bones. Fast forward millions of years to 2007. Heavy machinery operators for Corite International were out there mining for amylite, a really rare gemstone near the St. Mary River in Lethbridge, Alberta. In the dead center of this massive industrial operation, they struck bone. And they stopped everything to call in the paleontologist. That careful excavation led to a beautifully preserved specimen that was formally described and named in 2012, honoring the province of Alberta and René van der Velde, the late founder of that gem mining company. Ultimately, Albertonectes van der Velde represents the absolute pinnacle of an evolutionary trend. It shows us just how far nature can take a specific adaptation, like a long neck for stealth hunting, and push it to 76 vertebrae and 23 feet, just to exploit a very specific niche in a crowded ocean. But it also reminds us of how much we rely on pure chance, like a gem miner just doing his job in Alberta, to uncover these lost wonders. Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. What other record-breaking, extreme adaptations might still be hidden beneath the earth, just waiting for a lucky break to see the light of day? Definitely keep that in mind the next time you start to think we've discovered everything there is to find. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep exploring.